Hello. In the previous session, we have seen how the two different failure modes can be triggered for a column depending on the slenderness ratio. So, in this session, we will begin to quantify these effects and we will see how to calculate under what conditions which failure limit state will be triggered. Let's begin by considering an example. So, let's say there is an ISWB 150 and we want to calculate failure loads for different lengths of this section considering pin ends, right? So for pin ends, which means k is equal to 1. Now from IS 808, we can get the basic properties of the section, which is ISWB 150. So the primary quantity of interest here will be the radius of gyration, right? And in most of these sections, there will be two axes. One is a strong axis, one is a weak axis. And here we are taking the lower of the two radius of gyration, which means we are considering the weak axis bending because that will actually govern the uh, buckling. So squashing load is straightforward to calculate. So Py is Fy times A, and for Fy we take 250 megapascals, and 2170 is the area of cross section of this material of this section. So the squashing load comes out to be, let's say, 542.5 kilonewtons. For the Euler buckling load, we can calculate it from the buckling formula, Euler buckling critical buckling load formula, which is pi squared EI by L squared, right? Now I also we have taken from the table. This is also I min, which is the weaker axis, moment of inertia. Okay. So when we calculate this in terms of, let's say, L squared, because L is a variable. We want to see how the critical buckling load changes with respect to temperature. Now, what we can already expect is that this is a behavior of 1 over x squared in terms of graph, right? So if we plot y and x, we would expect that the buckling load is going to vary like that because we are trying to plot it as a function of L, right? And L appears in the denominator as L squared. So then we can generate a table where we, let's say, consider different values of L. So let's say from 1 meter to 5 meter, we consider different values of the length of the column in this case. And we calculate the critical buckling load using the expression which we have developed. Okay. So what we see is that the critical buckling load is very high for the lower lengths, right? So, in fact, if we see that up to 2500, right, up to this length, the critical buckling load is actually more than the, sorry, so somewhere up to 1500 mm, the critical buckling load is more than uh, the squashing load. So the squashing load is 542 and the critical buckling load up to 1500 is 830. So what it means is that somewhere in between here, between 1500 and 2 meters, so between 1.5 and 2 meters, the mode of failure will change, right? So below that length, the mode of failure is going to be yielding, and beyond that length, the mode of failure is going to be buckling, right? So somewhere here there is a length which is of interest. So left of this length is yielding failure, and right of that length is buckling failure, right? So depending on the length, the failure mode is going to change. We can also calculate the buckling stress, right? Again, by the similar type of approach. And now this again is in terms of lambda squared. So the expected shape of the behavior is again going to be 1 by x squared type. So now we can calculate it in terms of lambda. So this first row is showing the values of lambda for different values of lengths. So for 1 meter, the lambda is 47. For 5 meters, the lambda is 239. So again, what we see is that, for a certain value here, right? So to the left of that lambda value, the failure is due to crushing or failure is due to squashing, right? Because the critical buckling stress is greater than the yield stress. So yield stress will be achieved first. But towards the right, the critical buckling stress is smaller than the yield stress, right? So the yielding, before yielding can happen, buckling will take place. Okay. So now it is possible to calculate the length at which this failure mode changes by simply equating the critical buckling load to the yielding load, right? So with L as the variable, we can equate critical buckling load and the yielding load, and from here we can calculate L to be 1856 mm, so somewhere around 1.85 meters. The mode of failure of the column will change for this particular section, right? And we can actually plot, let's say, failure load versus length of the column, right? So up to a length of this 1856. So up to this length, so before this is yielding and after this is buckling, right? And up to yielding, of course, it is uh, straight line, because the yielding load will not change because the yield stress of the material doesn't change, right? Of course, if it's a different material, then the value might change, but it will remain constant with respect to the length. Now, beyond the length where the transition takes place, we will see a 1 by x squared type of behavior, primarily because this is now governed by buckling, right? So in this case, the squashing load is now more than the buckling load. So if let's say we are talking about a length somewhere here, the squashing load will remain constant, right? So now when it is being loaded, the buckling load will be achieved first before it can actually reach anywhere near the squashing load. So the figures of this kind which we have just drawn, these are called column strength curves, right? So based on these curves, one can predict what is the behavior of column going to be for different lengths, right? Now, of course, one of the bottlenecks here, or one of the caveats here, is that it depends on the length and we are measuring the load directly. So one simplification which can be done, which will harmonize things, or which will make things more general, is that we can develop a graph between failure stress and slenderness ratio. Okay, so now this to some extent will become independent of the section, because now slenderness ratio considers the effects of the sectional properties, right? So for different slenderness ratios, we can see what are the different failure stresses. And again, there will be a critical slenderness ratio where the behavior qualitatively changes from squashing to buckling. Now, in order to further generalize this so that more general column curves can be developed, which can be used for design, the notion of generalized slenderness is defined. Okay, so although we solved a little bit of problem by converting the load versus length graph to a stress versus slenderness ratio graph, but the slenderness ratio again, is a combination of the sectional properties and length. So it will vary from section to section or from length to length, right? So for that matter, we define a generalized slenderness ratio, which is called lambda bar, as the square root of the ratio of the yield to the critical buckling stress. Okay, so eventually it takes this form. Okay, now one of the advantages of defining this is that when yield stress is smaller than the critical buckling stress, this lambda bar will be less than 1. Okay, and in this case, yielding will govern the failure. Similarly, when yield stress is greater than the critical buckling stress, lambda bar will be greater than 1. So buckling will govern the failure. So basically, lambda bar equal to 1 is always the transition point. So the transition from yielding to buckling will always happen for lambda equal to 1. So that is one advantage of defining this generalized slenderness. And most of the column curves are defined in terms of generalized slenderness. So on the x-axis of all column curves, usually generalized slenderness is shown. Now on the y-axis, instead of showing the critical stress, what is shown is the failure stress divided by Fy. Okay. Now if the failure stress is equal to Fy, so initially it will be 1, right? So for very small slenderness ratios, it will start out at 1. Then at a value of lambda bar equal to 1, that is a transition point. So beyond that it will look like that, right? So this is one more thing which is done for standardization, where on y-axis, instead of the critical stress, what is plotted is failure stress divided by the yield stress, right? So in the yielding region it is simply 1 because it is Fy by Fy, and in the buckling region it is simply FCR by Fy, right, or the critical buckling stress by Fy. So let's again look at another example where we try to develop the theoretical column curve. So this notion of drawing a curve between failure stress normalized by yield stress to the generalized slenderness, that is the so-called theoretical column curves, because they give the strength of the column. Now let's say we consider ISSC 100. Again, from IS 808 we can get the relevant values. In this case R min is 23.1 millimeters, right? And we also know the other material properties. K is equal to 1 because it is a pin-pin connection, right? Now for this we can calculate the critical failure stress or critical buckling stress, right? So for the two sections it will be different. Again, it is being calculated in terms of L squared. Now for one of the sections I am showing the calculations. For the other, please try to do it yourselves. So now again, for different values of lengths, we can calculate the critical buckling stress, right? And then we can calculate the failure divided by Fy. So if the failure is governed by yielding, which is, in this case it is governed by yielding, so it is just 1. In this case it is governed by yielding, so it is just 1. But beyond that, this is governed by buckling, so this is now 116.7 divided by 250, that is 0.47. And the lambda bar is simply defined as the actually this square root should be broken here. So it is the square root of Fy by FCR, or it is this expression. Okay, so these are the numbers which come out for lambda bar, and then we can begin to plot this. So what we see is that for ISSC 100, this particular variation is what governs the failure stress. Now this is normalized failure stress with respect to the generalized slenderness ratio lambda bar, and we see that the transition happens at lambda bar equal to 1, and up to lambda bar equal to 1, the failure normalized failure stress is unity, right? And what is interesting to note is that if we now again plot the same type of figure for the other section which we had considered, ISHB 150, it actually lies just on top of it, right? So this is one advantage of using this generalized slenderness and normalized failure stress for plotting the column strength curves. So in this way, all the sections and all the possible lengths of a column can be harmonized into one single figure. Okay, so this is how ideal column curves or the theoretical column curves can be developed. But of course, behavior of real curves is a little bit different, which is what we will consider in the next session.